We don't know. We don't know. All right. Come on. All right. We're back, everyone. Sorry about that. I have to say, we were just laughing about this. Technology is great until it doesn't work. And you got to troubleshoot when it happens. And I think the biggest lesson we know when it comes to kids who learn differently, we know how to be resilient. So let's just continue on here. Again, guys, if you're tuning in, sorry about that. We just had to reboot this here. So again, if you're watching, please share where you're watching from. I have Piper Paul, a renowned educational rights attorney, and Piper was just sharing where and how she got started in this amazing field. So Piper.
Sure. So I after law school, I was a prosecutor in homicide investigations. So I learned a lot about investigations, which comes in handy in this area of the law. And I always had an interest in psychology. And this is a great combination. And my mother was a strong role model and was a strong advocate for children. And I also had a family member that had a significant disability. And I watched them suffer, and I watched my family suffer. So that combination led me down this path. And I've been doing it about 15 years now.
Wow. Wow. So combining all of your strengths here, I mean, with psychology and, you know, having a passion for kids, what's that like, knowing that you've really helped families been able to navigate this, you know, some of these awful experiences?
Thank you. It's actually a challenging area because nobody wants to hire a lawyer. And when you go to a lawyer, things have gone pretty badly. So I'm always in awe of clients that trust me and allow me to work with them and help them. And I see the hardest moments, and then I see the joy at the end. And that's what makes it worth it.
Right. I mean, it is one of those moments. I mean, what I do working with kids, it's just the same feeling. And I know that a lot of us are curious, especially now with COVID-19 and the whole unknown of what's going to happen next year and what's going to happen. I know a lot of parents have IEP meetings that have been canceled. And what do we do? How do we navigate next year?
Yeah, that's a great question. So guidance has come down, and Betsy DeVos, through the CARES Act, did not take away any rights of children. I mean, this is for the United States. I can't speak for other countries. So in the US, you still have all your rights. And they should be holding PPTs and IEPs and 504 meetings. And if they're not, you should document it in writing. That you're requesting the meeting, be very polite, note your concerns, note if your child is regressing or struggling, and agree to have it virtually. Also, you can agree to have certain team members not present.
Right, right. I mean, I think communication is the most important. Knowing that there is a human being on the other side, and you are a master communicator. I mean, you are, being an attorney in and of itself is you have to communicate a point, a message to an opposition, or working with all different types of individuals. So how can parents, what are some tips that parents can take when they sit down in these meetings, and what should they listen for?
That's really a very interesting question. I think that part of it is trying to understand the school's perspective. My sister, who was a lawyer, became a teacher, now is a principal. And she's been extraordinarily helpful to me in being successful in what I do. You need to come to the table with ideas. So you need to collect your own data. And that's not numbers, but that's maybe you do a videotape of your child, or you note certain topics that they struggle. How long can they focus? What kind of breaks do they need? Do they need sensory breaks? All of this is data. Do they work well with the video, you know, if it's a video record? Right. And bring all that to the table, and then also come up with some suggestions and plans. Regarding planning for next year, what I recommend is that you ask for 3 plans. You have your IEP or your 504 plan, that's if the kids are in school, but you have to be realistic. I think you have to ask for a hybrid plan. What's that going to look like in a virtual plan? A friend of mine did a survey, and we analyzed the data. There was over 3,000 participants. And what was found in the study was that when there was, you said, communication and connection, when the kids actually could see their teacher and interact, that had a profound impact on not only the children, but the families.
Wow, that's so, that's wonderful. I mean, there's just all so much to that. And I don't want you to say too much because I know you have a presentation you wanted to share with all of us. And I think before we really dive into all these questions, and I have a bunch, I know that our viewers have a bunch. So why don't we just get into this, this presentation. It's a great visual, and I think it'll really help answer a lot of questions. Then after, if there's more, I'm sure there will be, we'll get into it. So how does that sound? Does that sound all right?
Totally.
Wonderful. Yep. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and share this. Okay. And everyone, just so you know, there is we are a little bit ahead here, a little sneak preview of everything. All right, we're here. So guys, if you're watching this, just know that there is a 15-second delay. So we are going to be as patient as we can with all of your questions. So Piper, let's take it away, and I will be the turner here. So let's do it.
So what I am covering, but I'm obviously very flexible to other kinds of questions, are what are the laws that protect students with disabilities? What is a free, appropriate public education? That's actually key in this area. What is compensatory education? What is the CARES Act? And whether or not there are any waivers as a result of the CARES Act towards children's rights.
Excellent. All right.
So where you have to start is who's considered a person with a disability. And this ties in, you have to have a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. So that can be focus, concentration, breathing, attention, walking. It's very, very broad. You have to have a record of the impairment, or you're regarded as having the impairment. This is a law here describing what a person with a disability needs to have.
Now, is this national or is this specific to, this is national?
Yeah. So this is the United States, and I'm talking in general terms. In your own states or jurisdictions, you would need to talk to an attorney licensed in your state. But the way these laws work for schools are there's federal laws, and the Section 504, the American Disability Act, and the Individual Disability Education Act. They're federal. States must follow those laws or they can have funding taken away.
Wow. And have you found any pushback with this? Like, have schools try to push the limits with this, and states, have they pushed the limits, or are they generally?
So I think that schools are under tremendous pressure financially, and the way a lot of times parents feel this is very personal. I think that it's about money. And I think if schools had all the money and the resources, they would provide a lot more, but they don't. So yes, there is pushback.
Right.
So if the child has a disability and they need an aid, service, or accommodation, they can either have an IEP, which is your individualized education plan, or you can have a 504 plan, depending on the nature of your disability. So if you have something like migraines, narcolepsy, you may have a 504 plan. If you have dyslexia, dyscalculia, autism, you may have an IEP.
Now, can you just explain a little bit about the difference more, and how, what meetings should parents be looking for here? Yeah.
Sure, I think it's on the next slide.
Oh, okay, getting ahead of myself. Look at that.
So Section 504 we kind of covered, but I could answer the question here. So the idea is it's a civil rights law, and you have to level the playing field. And this includes for after school activities. It's field trips. Sometimes parents say, my child's not allowed to go unless I go. That's not the way the law works. They have to provide someone. And if you fall under this Section 504, you would have a 504 meeting, which you can request at any time to be held. And there are certain people that have to be there and attend. And in that meeting, you would have to show that you have a disability under the American Disability Act and Section 504. And then accommodations and modifications would be planned for you. It could be like extra time. Maybe it can go all the way up to college that you get to register first for your classes. It could be a nurse if you have type 1 diabetes. It could be an adaptive PE class. So those are more like accommodations and modifications. So where this definition as to what a disability comes from is the American Disability Act. And this is a similar, you can think of the 504 and the ADA are like best friends. So Section 50, Title II of the ADA broadened the definition of what a disability is. And it is very, very broad. It's not just like the 11 categories that are on IEPs. So it's anything that has a substantial impact on a major life activity. So I kind of jumped ahead, but 504, these two intersect, they like each other very much. And it's the idea of level the playing field. A lot of times I'll be hired to get accommodations on standardized tests. That goes all the way up into law school. So sometimes somebody may need a reader. There's with dyslexia, often a reader, no spell check, certain parts wouldn't be timed. So those type things, you talk to your school and you talk to your doctor and you come up with what is needed and the reasons why. And it's all to level the playing field. So you can really see what the student understands and knows.
Right. Now, Piper, you may be explaining this in the rest of the slides because, clearly I have a tendency to jump ahead. But I've spoken to a lot of parents and they've said that there's been pushback with a lot of the schools feeling that they have to let their kid fail in order for the schools to even be willing to have a conversation about providing services to the kids. What can we tell to these parents? What do we do?
It's very common schools say that. That is not the law. So the law covers many areas: academic, social, emotional, behavioral, and adaptive. So if the child has straight A's but has 0 friends and is being excluded and taunted, or can't understand pragmatic language or get into into exchange with peers, that is an area. If a child has straight A's but has serious mental health issues, maybe they have OCD or have panic attacks, that's a disability. Grades often are not relevant. Schools will say that, but that is inaccurate.
Wow, that's so powerful because so many, I hear it all the time, and I'm sure for you, those of you watching probably have similar stories. I, for one, with my story, when I was in 6th grade, I was 3 grade levels behind in reading, yet I was being forced to read out loud in class in front of the entire class, and I couldn't do it. And then it got to a point where the school was so focused on my behavioral problem because, I wasn't being reached. So what happens when a kid's not being reached? Boom, they are now labeled a behavioral problem, and the school can't get past that.
True. Unfortunately, schools can label, and if there's a behavioral issue, there's a reason. I always say, children do not like to get in trouble. That is not the end game. It's a symptom of something else going on. So in that case, schools, there's something called child find. Districts have to do comprehensive evaluations in all areas of suspected disability, irregardless of grades. There's also something called twice exceptional. You can have somebody who's gifted that has a significant disability, and they could have an IEP as well.
Okay, so child find?
Child find, right. So it's under the federal law. So a school must evaluate children in all areas of suspected disability.
Okay, I'm going to post this in our comments. So okay, that's really important, guys. So I think it's just some great feedback. When I was younger, we didn't really know And I think what's so great is that we now have a resource to be able to get this kind of information. A lot of times it's just not knowing, which once you learn it, it makes all the difference. So thank you for that, Piper.
So the next area that children can be protected if they don't have a 504 plan, it falls under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act of 2004, IDEA. That's what it's called for good reason, too many words. The purpose of that, this law, if you try to think why it was created, is to ensure all students with disabilities have what's called a free, appropriate public education. That doesn't mean they have to go to public school. If the public school doesn't provide a program that's appropriate, districts can be responsible to pay for the private schools. So it has to emphasize special education, related services. Those are things like OT, PT. You had a question?
Oh, no, I'm here. I'm right with you.
You have to meet the child's unique needs. So you want to set the bar high and not low. And this is where the purpose is. They need to be able to either go on for further education, be able to get a job, or to live independently. All those things are very, very important. If the district's not able to accomplish any of those things by graduation, the students can, districts can be responsible for students through their 21st birthday. So they could graduate in high school, but they can still be responsible for additional services to prepare them either for unemployment, higher education, or independent living.
Wow. Okay, great. And I want to just pause for a second, because for those of us watching, if you have questions, I'm watching these comments. So please ask away. I'm going to take notes of the different people who are asking questions. If you want to ask anonymously, you can just shoot me a message and I'll make sure I don't miss any names. But this is just a great opportunity for us to come as a community and learn together. So I think that, again, with the pushback that parents have, how do they come in as educated as possible to a meeting like this and be like, well, technically you can, it's giving services until they're 20, you said 25 or 21?
21st year.
21st year,
yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Those are for like children that have more profound disabilities, or it could be like a student that had serious mental health issues during school and didn't go to school for a couple of years and missed a lot of school. It could be for that type program, for a program like that. And there's programs all over the country that do this. One website that I think is extraordinary is called Rightslaw.com, WRIGHTS law, LAW.com. And Pete's an attorney who had dyslexia. And I don't think he learned how to read until he was 6th grade. And his wife is a psychologist. And they have so much information there. And there's another organization called COPA, Council of Parents. I forgot what it stands for, the acronym, but that's another great resource. A lot of times, I think if you try and you get nowhere, you're going to need an attorney or a very strong advocate that's knowledgeable.
Oh.
Okay, so 504 goes with a 504 plan. IDEA, you get an IEP. One thing that's kind of interesting is that the name of the meeting varies from state to state. So Connecticut, it's a PPT. In, I think, New York, it's a CSE. In Texas, it's an ARD. So the name of your meeting may be different, but the ultimate goal is to get an IEP, which is your child's contract. And I just put some important things that need to be in that, the students' present levels of performance, because the districts have to show that the child is making progress and it has to be objective. So you have to have a baseline. It's an individualized plan with measurable goals and objectives. Again, it should not be subjective and you should be able to understand it. And then oftentimes there's related services like OT, PT, speech, assistive technology. And another one I didn't put in there is parent training. Parents have the right to parent training as a related service under IDEA.
Wow, I didn't know that either. That's really good to know. Piper, we did have one question here. Is there any help for students that are currently in private school?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. So again, it depends on the state, but the districts, even though the students are in private school, are still responsible. So the public school should still be asking whether or not the family wants to have a meeting if the child had been identified. If the child was never identified, but you suspect something's going on, you're going to contact your public school where you live, and you're going to ask for a PPT meeting, and you're going to ask for evaluations. If those evaluations are granted, the district that does the evaluations is the district where the private school is. So it's pretty interesting, the nuances there, but you absolutely have rights. Some states like Connecticut, if you choose to homeschool, you do not have rights. But that's Connecticut. Other states vary.
It's good to know. Thank you. Thank you for asking that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, this is kind of like, I like that picture, by the way. Doesn't it look
I
amazing?
think it's so cool. What mountain is that?
I know. I don't know.
I want to climb that.
The free, appropriate public education is key. You have a right to that under Section 504 or an IEP. And so 504, you'll get that by modifications, accommodations, related aids and services in the general education classroom. And in the IEP, oftentimes that can be push in the regular classroom, and then sometimes it's pull out in other classes. Intro F is a new Supreme Court case, well, 2017, and the IEP has to be reasonably calculated to enable a child to make progress appropriate in light of the child's circumstances. And they should all have a chance to meet challenging objectives. So what was happening or has happened is sometimes the bar is set really low, or the goals and objectives are the same thing over and over again. I once had a case where a brilliant young woman, she was 17, and one of her goals was to be able to get up from her desk and put her paper into a paper basket, the homework basket. I mean, that's ridiculous. So the bar has to be set high for these kids. And if you're saying in your IEP, it's the same thing year after year, something is not, it's not working.
Have you seen a lot of like an increase in school cooperation or a decrease in school cooperation over the years?
So I have a different, I think because I've been doing this so long,
Right.
what in Connecticut and probably other states, there appear to be a few major firms that represent most all school districts, and you know them. Districts will often work to come up with a resolution or solution, because if you end up going to hearing and parents win, the districts have to pay the attorney's fees. So a lot of times things resolve. One way, if families have resources, and everyone's different, but private evaluations can be very helpful to understand how your child learns and what your child needs. If the district does an evaluation and you disagree with it, or you don't think it was comprehensive, you have a right to what's called an IEE, independent educational evaluation. The district has to pay for it, and they cannot pick your evaluator. A lot of times they'll give you a list and say you have to pick one of these evaluators, but that is not accurate.
And that's national. That's a national. Wow. Wow. I mean, it's when you walk into a school, usually it seems like school represents authority, and
Right.
They call all the shots. So in reality, we have shots to call as well. We can say, actually, I can choose whoever I want.
Right.
And
well,
that's,
yeah. As long as they're qualified, you can. And they'll often
as long as they're qualified. That's right.
Yeah. And often they'll tell you no, but that's inaccurate. And so that's when so sometimes if you're getting a lot of pushback, you do need an experienced education lawyer. And some advocates are fantastic also, but advocates can't provide legal advice.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great advice also. We did have a question here that, is there anything to help a homeschooling family? We have a few of them on here.
Yeah, that's great question. So I think Connecticut is kind of an exception. And I think depending on what state you're in, I would suggest you contact your public school, request a meeting, and if you have concerns, ask for an evaluation. And in Connecticut, you would find out you don't have any rights because you homeschool, But in other states, you may find out that you do have right to evaluations. And then you may get evaluations, and then the district would be responsible to provide services if needed.
Wow, thank you for answering that and asking that. Okay.
Oh, yes. I think this is how many families are feeling, although.
Oh, this is a big one. This is it, guys, right here.
The survey that a woman named Diane Wilcuts out of West Hartford put a survey out, and she was very generous to let myself and a team of people I put together go through the data. And there's a lot of information, but I'm sure many parents know there's limited instruction time, many behavioral and emotional challenges for everyone. Limited related services. So a lot of the services that the children should be receiving, they're not receiving. Delayed 504 and IEP meetings, schools are just saying we're not having them. A key issue here are delayed assessments. And my concern is districts are saying, well, we're just going to evaluate Johnny when we get back to school. That's such an unknown. Johnny's struggling. Johnny might be regressing. Johnny might have made great progress in certain areas also. So if districts are trying to use that not to create a program, I would suggest that you present some of your data, what you're actually seeing. There are some tests that can be done, and you may find an outside evaluator that will do the tests. And you would ask the district to pay for that. Another thing, there's limited progress and likely regression and exhausted and overwhelmed families. And the survey, though, really showed that some people felt dismissed, like they no longer mattered, and their kids were just getting paper packets and there was no connection. And some of the children, they were very confused by the screen. And, and then there's some things that really work for kids. Some of the kids that have extreme anxiety, the homeschooling was actually working. Some of the kids that may have certain types of, the ADHD, it worked because they could work for a little bit, take a break, go back. So it really, really varies, but it's been very hard on everyone, and it's uncertain. Lack of communication was one of the biggest frustrations among families.
I mean, communication again is like the big thing, that it's like the big theme of everything that I talk about, that you talk about, that a lot of people are starting to realize maybe it's more than just the academics. Maybe it's more than just teaching. Like, what is teaching? Teaching is communication.
Yes.
It's all communication. So schools, it's a big wake-up call, because all of a sudden your students are no longer in the classroom. So now you're literally relying on your ability to communicate. Yeah, go ahead.
Some parents are having to be experts in all these areas. I mean, like some children that, have autism, they may have had a behavioral therapist. So things like that, you should ask that a behavioral therapist be assigned to the sessions. Some children had OT or PT. I read a really cool comment. An OT asked to do a virtual tour of the home and then work with a family to build a gym to do the exercises in the home. So I think that people need to try to work collaboratively to come up with creative and innovative ways to really reach the children.
Yeah, go ahead.
Side note, which I wanted to say, one thing that you need to ask your school, the platforms that they're using, are they HIPAA compliant? HIPAA meaning, is any information being shared? Is the data being sold? How are they protecting your children and your children's rights? So sometimes the platforms you can pay extra to have them extra secure, and you want to ensure that that's happening, because I'm sure everyone's seen in the news, sometimes like somebody will come in on a session, but some of that data is mined and sold to other companies. So you need to ensure that your district is paying what they need to protect your children.
Well, I mean, I guess with every, catastrophic event that happens, like coronavirus, and when we want to be all together, there's always bad people out there. And it is important to be aware and to be educated on this, because as much as we want everyone to be good, some of them, there's some bad apples.
And the companies actually some of the companies, they take people's data. So you get the service for free, but they take the data and sell it to other companies.
Right, right. So actually, I mean, on the conversation of data, I mean, it's a very controversial word, data. Um, but I've had a lot of conversations that we should be collecting, we as parents and families should be collecting data, observational data, we can call it,
Exactly.
on our kids because, well, I mean, this is one of the only times in history, even during World War II, schools didn't stop, that parents can now see what their kids are like during school for the most part, instead of the results of the day at school when they get picked up at school and saying, how's your day? And it's good. You can now see what's going on. So what are some thoughts on that?
I agree. That data needs to be collected. Like you could have either on your computer or some kind of a pad, like data would be how long your child could focus or concentrate, how long they could work on their own, if at all, certain topics that might have been harder, any behavioral issues or crying. One thing that's happening, there are a lot of comments that parents are concerned because the impact this is having on the parent-child relationship, because some of the kids are resentful, that their parents are making them do this with school, and how's that going to carry over?
Right.
So you have to follow your gut and your instinct, and you don't want your kid to completely freak out. But try to see what they can do independently and what they can't, and look for the positives. I mean, maybe some of the social skills have really increased, or
Right.
independence has increased. All that's important information.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest tips that I always give to parents here and that I work on with kids that I mentor is outlets and looking at why are kids gravitating towards the things that they like, even if it's video games, because there's a lot we can learn with video games. But the point is, there's 3 different types of outlets we should be looking at. One is creative outlets. What are the outlets that spark and boost our creativity? For me, it's model trains. I love model trains. For someone else, it could be drawing or collecting rocks or something. The second one is an outlet that boosts your heart rate. Okay, so I love running. Someone could love rock climbing or dance or swimming or whatever, football, whatever that is. But that's an outlet that boosts your heart rate. Okay. The third outlet is an outlet that boosts your passion. Okay, what are something that you just can lose track of time over? And those 3 things we do without even thinking. But if we can identify what those are, especially for our kids, because boredom is a big thing. Kids are starting to get bored of video games. Believe it or not, I believe that, especially with the students that I'm working with, they're like not really sure what to do if they're not playing. So how could we get them away from that a little bit and use different parts of their brain? And you know what? Video games is like dessert, I always say. You can't have too much of it or else it's bad for you, but it's okay to have portions because it is a form of an outlet for a lot of kids. Even if it's Minecraft, I mean, Minecraft is a creative activity that will help with building a world. You're literally building a world. So anyway, the point is, some different types of observational data we can look at is very well outlets and different activities our kids are gravitating to.
And I think what I saw was structure also, but
right.
All these things sound great. And one of the most concerning things I saw was how parents, I felt that they really were beating themselves up. They felt they were letting their children down, that some worked, they were essential workers. They were putting in 12-hour days. So I think you have to be realistic and kind to yourself. And there's only so much everyone can really do.
Wow, that is such great advice because it is for parents. I mean, I'm not a parent yet. I'm the other side, but it's a game that you can't really. There's not a lot of winning going on because it's hard to get feedback. Like, how am I doing? What's going on here? And I think that's really good. Good tips, even for kids watching and young adults. So,
and I think asking the school how they're measuring progress. So they should be doing some assessments as well, or what they see when they're interacting with the students. That's the data needs to be coming from the school as well.
mhm.
And not just these delayed tests they're going to have the school psychologist do. Yeah, I know I've had a case where a child unfortunately is in the hospital for the second time from becoming emotionally dysregulated. And I wanted things to change, to come up with plans. And the district said, no, we're just going to wait until they get back. We can't look at the child now, which was the wrong answer because the child's not functioning. So we have to come up with another plan. So that was a big error that the school district made. And now the family will likely have to finding a private school, and then they'll likely be seeking the district to pay for it.
One day, this will all change. I have faith.
I do too. Compensation. So compensatory education, you get, so that's sort of an issue. And, some people are talking about semantics, that districts fear that if everybody tries to get compensatory education, or that it could bankrupt schools. There's really a lot of variance across districts, but your child needs to be in the position they would have been had they received the services. That doesn't necessarily mean an hour for hour, but if, let's say, a kid has dyslexia, they have not been getting their research-based reading instruction, that's really problematic, and you're likely going to see regression. So what is going to be needed to get them back in the place had they received those services, or for the districts that didn't offer any services? So that's where that's all going to come in, and you do want to track it. So how many OT and PT and speech is your child receiving? Some kids are receiving absolutely nothing, and they're getting homework packets. So you want to keep track. The instruction has to be individualized. This is the guidance by the team. So that doesn't mean the team decides, you're part of that, and the law requires that you have a voice. The award will be a case-by-case determination, and the purpose is to deliver the services that the child should have received.
Wow. Okay, perfect. I mean, and guys, again, if you have questions, please ask away here. I did have a question here. The question here is, how often do parents prevail in outside placement when students have not been taught to read and is going into 5th grade despite having an IEP for dyslexia for 3 years? Wow. They are reading at a 1st grade level.
I'm really sorry to hear that. So it sounds like the program is not working, whatever program that is. You should talk to an attorney in your district. And that's an attorney question. It's not an advocate question. Attorney in your district, see if you could locate a school, find out what the program is. I can't weigh in because I don't know the facts, but I don't know the whole case, but that's definitely something you should have a consultation with an attorney.
Awesome. Thank you. All right.
Yeah, this was the CARES Act. That's some districts were sort of delaying holding meetings because Trump, Betsy DeVos was supposed to weigh in to Trump on whether or not the FATE least restrictive environment or any timelines were changed. So they didn't get changed. So now in Connecticut, we're seeing a lot of the meetings are now being held. And I liked her line was to encourage districts to be creative and innovative and utilize technology. Waivers, the issue of whether there were waivers, no waivers were signed. Oh, that's one thing. But regarding waivers, so some school districts are asking parents to sign waivers, like to give up their rights. Please don't do that. Until you really know what you might be giving up, go talk to an experienced advocate or to an attorney and find out sort of the ramifications of that.
Follow-up question on this one, okay? Because we just had a question asked here, and I think for a lot of those watching that may not have the financial resources to pay for legal help or an advocate, where can they find help? Are there websites? Are there how does that work?
So so some attorneys take pro bono cases, and I always have pro bono cases. I have to limit them because I have to pay my light bills. So you should always call. And some attorneys work on payment plans. I've had some people pay me over 10 years. So you may find that attorney that will work with you. If not, sometimes your legal services have that. You may find a great advocate. I would go to rightslaw.com, and I would also go on COPA, and there's a listserv there, and you just start asking your question. Rightslaw has a book you can read.
What's the book?
Cool. He's got a bunch. There's like the basic kind of law book, but you can also access everything online. I forgot the name. And then he has another one about not having emotion, and like how to advocate, but not through emotions, to try to be objective with facts. There's another thing parents may or may not know. You have a right to your child's educational file through FERPA, Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. That's a great place to start. So you're going to ask your school district for a complete copy of your child's educational file, and they have to provide that. Some districts have copies, others have to allow you to come into the school and take photos or whatever of the file. But that provides a lot of information, and you're going to likely see things you were not aware of. That will help you understand your child and how they're learning or functioning in school.
Wow, yeah, we had someone just commented that has read the Rightslaw IEP book and said that it's amazing and informative. Thank you, Chrissy.
It's fantastic. Yeah, I think you can email that. That's the best book I've found for starting out.
Wow. All right, guys, we got it. We got the book. All right, the Rightslaw IEP book. It's amazing. It's informative. I've not read it yet. I will. I'm adding it to my list. I know you probably see my pen doing this, right? I'm going to be taking some notes and then sharing it with all of you guys watching on some of these different acts and websites and resources, and also how to contact Piper if you are interested in working with her and all of that. So, yes.
If not, I can help you. I will take the time. If you mention, you were here with Jake, I will take the time to steer you towards some resources in your state.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. See that, guys? We are all in this together. No one is alone. Please don't ever think you're alone in this. Okay. Please know that you can reach out to me. I will help you. We are in this together. Piper is here. All of our resources are here. The worst thing you could do is not pick up the phone or not press message Jake. That's the worst thing you could do. The best thing you could do is do it, and then you'll know and be able to get connected to someone. Okay, guys. Okay. On this conversation about picking up the folder here. So how long does the school have to provide you with your child's folder?
The educational file, they have to retain the records. There's different guidelines. I think even like 7 years after they graduate. So they should get it to you. I honestly, I can't remember off the top of my head, but you should get it within the month. And I think it's a shorter time period than that. And if you don't, then you send over the same FERPA request and you put second request. If you're still not getting the records after that, you should try to make a phone call. You could either file a FERPA violation with the, I believe it's the Office of Civil Rights. Sometimes you can make a call there and they may call your school so you can get your file.
Does that cost money or is it free?
No, that's free. Yeah, that's free. Or sometimes if it's a lawyer that they know, the documents appear. Okay. It's about money, unfortunately, and never be embarrassed or always advocate. It's always about your kid, and try not to ever take anything personally. Districts sometimes will make it feel very personal, that it's you, that it's your family, that it's your problem, that they don't see what you see and you're imagining. You're not. Follow your gut. You got this.
Yeah, the one thing that I've learned is that there's a mother's gut, and it's never wrong.
No.
That's really great. Thank you. Thank you,
Final
Piper.
point, know your legal rights. So you can consult an attorney or, an advocate that's experienced, familiar yourself with these laws. Rightslaw is a phenomenal website. COPA, you can look at that. Try to be collaborative with your district. And you want to find, if you work with an attorney, try to find somebody that actually does have a collaborative relationship. Most cases get resolved. They really do get resolved. And please don't sign any waivers until you talk to someone, so you're not giving up any rights.
Have you found it more powerful when two parents go to these meetings, or if one representing the family goes?
It's nice if both can go. Another thing is, in almost all states, you have a right to record these meetings, and you can do it on your phone. And sometimes districts will make a production of it, but you could send an email in advance that you'd like to tape record the meeting. There's a lot of information being exchanged, and that you're happy to share a copy with the district if they'd like it. And what I found is people, they kind of forget that it's being recorded, and it's useful to go back if you need to listen to something again, or just to have it, download it to your computer, and you always have it.
That's really great. Thank you for sharing that.
Telephone.
Yeah.
Many states you cannot, like in Connecticut, if you're on the telephone with someone, you cannot record them without telling them. So be careful on on those type things.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely, when it comes to recording, do your research on that. Talk to an attorney on that. I think it's super important to build your team. Know your team, right? I call this your board of advisors. Okay, so there was the Jake's board of advisors. That's what I called it. And this is what helped me navigate school and successfully get through school, but it also has transformed how I live my life. Because the worst thing that we could do is know that we know everything and everything is perfect and goes our way. And you're on my board of advisors. I consider you one of a role model, and I admire your work, Piper.
Thank you.
I even had, when I was in college, I had the kitchen staff, the head of the kitchen on the board of advisors, because I needed food and I ate so much. So it would have gone broke if I was just doing that. So anyway, the point is that you have to know who's on your team. Okay. And if we look at everything that everyone's out to get us, and why me, that is not productive. And I understand that it's emotional. I understand that this is your baby. Your baby is being hurt by a system. Okay. I was that baby that was hurt by the system. And I will tell you this: love your kids. And sometimes the best way to get and advocate for them is to put that aside, put my baby aside, and to say, all right, let's have a meeting and have a conversation about this, and how can we work together as a team? So even if you have a friend who is an education lawyer or know of an advocate, bring them in your network, bring them part of your team, because these are the people that are going to be influential in the success of your kids.
You could take a friend to a meeting as well.
Oh.
Yeah, you could invite a friend to go with you for support.
Yeah, I think 2 is better than 1.
I do too.
I think 2 is better than 1. So that is a great point. I mean, even if you don't have a partner to go with you, either a father or a mother to join you, go with a friend. I think that's great advice. So yeah, I mean, let's see, all right, guys. So here's Piper's information.
Very blue.
Now, is there any other points that you think that our audience would be interested in hearing about, learning about? I know that we get there's a lot of parents on here, especially for kids that have dyslexia and ADHD.
Yeah.
And it's been tough. It's been tough, especially transitioning out of normal school into the home environment, transforming the home environment into an academic setting that's usually, spending most of the time at home either during the summertime or during the weekends. So parents having to navigate work and working with the kids and being the teacher and then working with all of the challenges associated with having a learning difference. It's tough. So what if there's just some words of encouragement of just what are just some points that our community can walk away with?
Yeah. As we started, I think communication, love yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself as a parent, and realize your limitations and focus on you, and find that 5 minutes a day for you.
Mm,
Kids are resilient, and they do push buttons. That's their job, but we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. And we're going to come out of this and a lot of different life lessons learned. Keep a perspective. Um, don't give up hope, and believe in yourself. I think
yeah,
it's the parents that really need to be lifted up.
yeah,
They're really bearing the brunt of all of this.
absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I did. There is a great question that was just asked here, and I think this is going to be a great takeaway. And I think that I'll be on a little bit after answering questions through commenting and all of that. But we had a question here that said, what can parents/advocates do that would be most effective to fix the system for our dyslexic students? And she's talking about national and at a state level.
Yeah, dyslexia is a really not addressed, and many school districts do not understand it, and they do not have appropriate programs in place. So the law requires it has to be research based. And what some districts do is it's a Mod Podge. They're not following the programs the way they are. You can do something called FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, and you can find out the resume and training of staff and individuals. You need to familiarize yourself. You can ask for a comprehensive reading assessment. So that's a special kind of evaluation that a very seasoned and experienced person in reading would do that. If they don't have it, then you're going to want to go ask for an out-of-district reading assessment. You're then going to know what type of reading programs your child will most likely really benefit from.
Mm-hmm.
And then where you're going to get into the struggle is the amount of hours needed. And you have to be persistent. It is a national problem. And
Yeah.
in fact, it wasn't even recognized in Connecticut on IEPs until a few years ago.
It's almost comical how messed up that is. Yeah.
And ADHD is not understood in the impact that it may or may not have on executive functioning and what that actually looks like. So I do a lot of juvenile work. It's the kid that pulled the fire alarm for and my first question, you can just kind of, a lot of kids do behaviors, but the kids that have the ADHD are the ones that get caught. So if your child gets caught or in trouble, or maybe they have the reading disability and they're acting out, they can't discipline the children if their actions are related to their disability. So some kids, they start suspending or trying to expel them. So you can often suspend up to maybe 10 days, but if you go to day 11, that's an expulsion, and you can't do that if it's related to the disability. So in your programs for students that get very frustrated, you're going to want some language in there. So you make it very clear that, yeah, there could be some emotional dysregulation or some behavioral actions, and be proactive. I guess be proactive in nature. Try to figure out the reading program, if it's Orton Gillingham or Wilson, or what is most effective. Find out the credentials of who's working with your child. Be sure it's not the paraeducator or paraprofessional. find out how many kids are in the group, are they all on the same level, and how are they measuring progress?
Well,
And
that's great.
yeah, and really focus on the reading. Yeah, I've had a student once that was 17 that couldn't read, and she found out at age 17 she had dyslexia. It literally, you're gonna get my blood boiling here. It's inexcusable, but take information, share it with the team and with the district on what it is.
Oh, great. Thank you for that. Now, I know,
Yeah.
I know that our hour is pretty much up, but there's just two more questions. And again, guys, I'm going to stay on for a little bit and answer some more. Piper, thank you so much for your time. I mean, it's so great to hear from you. And you just spoke at an incredible virtual conference, which is, you know, I mean, you're just doing great things. So thank you for what you're doing. And yeah, go ahead.
Thanks to all the parents and guardians and for all the hard work they're doing. They're really doing the really hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you to our parents. And if you guys do have any questions for me or are interested in my mentorship program, I work with kids with dyslexia and ADHD from around the world to help them build confidence with how they learn through advocacy. So you can reach out to me directly or visit my website at superpowerconsulting.com. Okay, so we're going to answer two more questions here. One is, what things should be put in IEPs or certain things to help the children to be put, sorry, there's just a lot of comments coming in here, to be put into IEPs to help in school or at home. I'll repeat that. I'm going to repeat that. What things should be put in IEPs or certain things to help the children to be put into IEPs to help in school or at home? Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. It does. So in the IEP, you're going to have goals, and under the goals, you're going to have objectives. So if your child has dyslexia, you're going to break down like where in the area of decoding that they're struggling, or it needs to be precise and measurable. And you have to have benchmarks. If they have some social skills, then you're going to want to find out how are the social skills going to be taught, and what research-based program like zones of regulation, if that's what's going to be used. Parents have a right to have a copy of that book, so you use similar language. If it's a occupational therapy, you want to be, a lot of times schools are dismissive and say their handwriting's fine. OT is much broader than that. It's fine motor control. If it's an issue with gross motor or proprioception, note the exact nature of the struggle. Is the child having problems going up the stairs? Is the child having problems throwing a ball, crossing midline? So that's where you have to figure out their present levels of performance, which you get from a lot of assessments. And based on that, you build off the IEP. Districts often use a computer program that generates a lot of these ideas. In addition to that, there's a page that has accommodations and modifications. So maybe your child gets embarrassed or really overwhelmed and they need a safe space. So you could have that in there, that they could go to the counselor's office and they could have a signal so they could get up and go. Some kids with ADHD to have gum. So have gum or fidget toys, or all those things can be built into these programs.
Awesome. Thank you for answering that. Okay, one last question, and we're going to wrap this thing up. All right. Thank you again, guys. So if the educators do not know about or were not educated about dyslexia, how can they help our children?
That's the problem. Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's the problem. So you can do a couple of things. One, you can always FOIA and find out what their training and education is. If you have an outside reading specialist, you could maybe pay for their time to come in, or you could ask the district to pay for their consultation. If you're getting nowhere, you will need to talk to an attorney. See if you can find somebody that does pro bono or reduced hours if needed. And they may be able to make some change, but it's like, how many times do you run into a brick wall? Very frustrating. Yeah.
Very. I've done it multiple
Oh,
times.
I engage in these conversations sometimes, and I'm like,
Uh,
keep the fight. Don't give up.
yeah, I think that's the best thing. We're gonna drop the mic on that one. Yeah. Don't stop until it's over. Guys, I know it seems like it's just never ending. We're running into a brick wall all the time, but we're slowly making progress. I always say 1 year seems like an eternity, but if you look 5 years from now back at this year, it's going to seem like it's 1 minute. So just know that we're in it now. We're in the fight, but there is a light on the other side. Whenever it rains, whenever there's a hurricane, the sun is still shining above the clouds. Okay. So remember that, know that. I believe next week, I'm going to have my siblings on to talk about the impact that a dyslexic ADHD child in the family has on the siblings, whether it's with jealousy and the attention, and what's the impact on that. So that's going to be a great conversation, super fun. I'm looking forward to it. And thanks again, Piper. This was so much fun.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone.
All right, guys, have a great night, okay? All right.